Hello, everyone. Welcome to After You Read Suki Alone. This is a spoiler review for the recent comic that just came out from Faith Erin Hicks. I always mess up that author's name, but I believe her name is Faith Erin Hicks. The way this works out, because this is a live stream, first I'm going to talk about the spoiler stuff I couldn't really get into in my non-spoiler review. By the way, if you have not watched it, you can go watch that now. It's called Before You Read Suki Alone, and then you can come into this video called After You Read Suki Alone. So yeah, like I said in my initial review, I am not that much of a big fan of Suki. I am often very indifferent to her, and whenever I encounter any other Suki fan out there, I'm always like, I don't get it. Like, why do you like her so much? She's just very just there. She's just kind of there to me. So I was hoping that this comic book would have, now I understand why I love Suki so much. Very similar to how you had like the Zuko Alone episode or the Korra Alone episode. You get like way more insight into those characters. However, I think that this comic book was not successful. I did see in my comments, though, that some people did think that this was successful. So hopefully in the discussion that we're going to have here in this live stream, I'll figure out what's going on, why people like Suki so much. But I'll go through some of the passages right now. So when we start off the comic book, obviously, we see Suki being brought in by Azula after Azula infiltrated Ba Sing Se as a Kyoshi warrior. And then we get a little bit of a flashback. And one of the things that I wanted to dive in deeper into is because there is a moment where Suki and her friends kind of like sneak away and like look at the Kyoshi warriors training, and they go, "Oh, I want to be like that. I want to be like, Kyoshi warrior." And they talk about how their meditation techniques don't deal with like sitting down and doing nothing, like very similar to like the monks of the air temples. And I thought, okay, that's interesting. Are we going to see more about how the Kyoshi warriors meditate via movement and via active fighting technique? And we don't. We just get, oh, hey, look at them. They're meditating. And then like one character goes like, well, I thought you supposed to meditate by sitting down and thinking about your thoughts. And they're like, not the Kyoshi warriors, but we don't get like, what that is. Like, it's like, and that's what I meant when I was talking about in my non-spoiler review, that like there are like tidbits here and morsels of interesting things that don't really pop up. And I'm like, well, can I get more insight into that's why I like the novels so much, because the novels go so deep into that. And I feel like some of these comic books, like I had a similar gripes with the Qatar comic book too, just very short and very, they just feel like kind of like they don't really impact the story all that much. Like, I don't think I got much of an impact here, except for the idea of, this conflict of interest between the Kyoshi warriors wanting to stay on the island or leave and help everybody out. Granted, that does kind of show itself in the show when they did leave to go to the Serpent's Pass to help people, get to Ba Sing Se safely. So again, that's nothing like entirely new. But what I did think one of the themes that was going to come up in the story was Suki being possibly too trusting of a person. Because I'm like, okay, cool. Like, because I think that Suki is kind of like just a do-gooder all the time. And usually those kind of characters, their flaw is that they're too trusting of people. So I thought that was going to come up with when she had this little thing with the prisoner. I think when she was trying to grow these seeds so that she can get the prisoners more healthy, so they can, be strong enough so that they can fight back against their captors. And she befriends somebody who eventually sells her out to the warden so she can get a better, a sentence or whatever. And I thought that, Suki would have had that challenge. Like, she would have, looked internally to herself and be like, oh man, I'm like too trusting of people. And maybe I shouldn't trust people all that often. And that notion doesn't really get brought up all that much. I mean, there's some funny moments. Like, I think like the way that this new character gets introduced, which I forget her name. Yeah, I completely forget her name. I'm looking for her name right now in the comic, but I don't see it. I don't know, but it's the one who betrays Suki. If you read the comic, you know what I'm talking about. But the one who betrays Suki, like the way she's introduced and she talks about like all this stuff and how she even got into the Boiling Rock because she denied, like, she broke some prince's heart who she wasn't into. Like, I thought that was funny, and then the beat to beat moments I think was fine. Just that the overall story I just felt very meh on, and I want to kind of extend it to like the live chat. Like, if there are Suki fans here in the live chat right now, why do you guys love Suki so much? I kind of want to know, like, uh, or what you guys thought about the comic in general. I think that's a good thing to go by, because really, like I said, like, there's not much that goes on. It's just the big conflict about, Suki trying to empower and lead the prisoners back into being, in full health, and just growing food for them, and and her still being a Kyoshi warrior and helping others in the same way that she went to help others when she was on the island itself. But I just feel like I just didn't get enough on Suki, like any new stuff. Like, yeah, she's badass. She's a cool fighter, but in terms of her personality, I just don't get it. But anyway, let me say what's up to the people who are in the chat. What's up, Sokka? What's up, Bruna? I'm not going to continue watching. Sokka left because he didn't want to get any spoilers, which is good. But Bruna here says, Suki is awesome, but yeah, the comic wasn't all that. Now I wonder, what could the comic have done for me to make it better? Like with Zuko Alone, we got to see the backstory of Zuko. We got to see why he was the way he was because of the cruelty of his father and him wanting his father's approval. With Suki, I don't know what it is I want to see from her. Like, I mean, I guess I did kind of mention it, like the trusting thing. Like, she's a very trusting person. So maybe if we got like an arc about her being too trusting with this prisoner, and she internalized that, and I don't know. But the thing, the issue with this too, is that some of these comic books are in between things we've already seen. So there's no real way. Like, I think I would have preferred Suki Alone if this happened after the show, and then we can get more into, I don't know, what she's doing after the group, or maybe like, what her identity is within the group. Is she just Sokka's girlfriend kind of a thing, or is she actually like friends with them? Because we don't really see her relationship too much with other characters outside of her and Sokka. Like, we don't really, like, I don't really even know what her relationship with Toph really is, except for when they were fighting at the end of Sozin's comic. But that's more of like combat stuff. I don't think they had like an interpersonal relationship. She didn't really talk to Zuko much, except for that one time where she's like, hey, yeah, remember you burned down my village? And he's like, oh yeah, sorry about that. Aang, she doesn't really have a relationship with Aang, really. Like Katara, like no real relationship with her. She really has just the strongest bond with Sokka, and that's it. And I think that maybe would have been a cool thing too. Maybe if they did a Suki Alone comic book that took place after the show, and we can see more of that, because I do think she's kind of suffering from that. Who's the best Team Avatar member, and why is it Suki? Yeah, that's typically the kind of thing that I get from people in chat or just like around, is like the fanaticism around Suki. Like, it's strong, but I just don't understand it, because I always never really thought about her. Like, after watching the show, I never was like, oh yeah, Suki, cool character. I always like had to remember her. Like, I'm like, oh yeah, that's right, she's a character in this. Like, every time they go to the first episode, when they go to the island of Kyoshi, and I'm like, oh yeah, she's a character. And then I see her in book 2, I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. Like, I didn't recognize her either, Sokka, because in Service Past, he's like, who is this girl talking to me because she doesn't have the makeup on? I'm like, yeah, who is this girl? And then in book 3, I'm like, yeah, she's cool. Like, the Bowling Rock episode is really cool with her, like, escaping and fighting. But I think that's the coolest thing about her, is just that she's a fighter. But in terms of her personality, Malik says the comic he thinks was just okay. Yeah, and that's the thing too. I want to make that very clear. I don't think the comic is bad at all. Like, I don't think there's anything actively bad about the comic. I think it's just aggressively mediocre and aggressively just like flat to me. Like, I will not probably be rereading this often or anything like that. Maybe for like, if I'm doing a versus video on Suki, then I'm going to look at some of her combat stuff here. But none of the combat she's doing here is like entirely different from what we already know about her in the show itself. So there's not really much in terms of that new. In terms of personality, like I was saying, like, I don't see a lot new from her. It's just more of the same. I didn't see anything that was very challenging in the lore. When we were going to get new stuff, like with the Kyoshi meditation techniques, we didn't really get more insight about that. So, you know how it is. Totally agree. I wish Suki's story would have had consequences on the overall story. Yeah, totally agree about that. Like, it could have been so much better. This just feels entirely mediocre to me. Like, this comic felt entirely mediocre. Off topic, but is your book on Audible? Yes, it is. But also, we're going to try and stay on topic because we're talking about Suki Alone here. The way it was mostly filler. Cool to see her background, but we knew nothing there would be relevant. So no excitement for discovering how the comic ended. Yeah, and that too. Like, they could have made it interesting. They could have done a backstory where we learned something new about Suki, especially when we saw her as a young child, like, being impressed by the Kyoshi warriors. The only thing we saw from there is that her friend left the island before her. So that's what motivated her to also leave, because she's like, yeah, you know what? We shouldn't just be on this island as like an isolationist society. We should go out there and help people, especially when the Fire Nation is, trying to do world domination right now. But that's just like stuff that we already knew from the show. Like, that wasn't like, entirely new stuff. So, hey, just dropping in for a hot second. I read this for free a while back. Yeah, while I love the art and coloring, the character Suki just isn't interesting enough to carry a story to me. Yeah, I completely agree with you. I have nothing to add. It's exactly my same sentiment and feeling. Would have been cool if she showed up on Korra, maybe even a flashback. Yeah, dude, like I have a video about this on my channel if you want to watch it for people who are watching the playback or people who are here in the live stream as well. Called The Most Disappointing Thing About Sokka, in which case I think it would have been awesome if the Sokka would have been in the show and that he was tied to the Red Lotus, that the Red Lotus assassinated him, and that's the reason why he's not in the show anymore. And then we in that flashback of the Red Lotus killing him, we could have seen Suki too, and it could just be that Suki just went away somewhere. Maybe she went back to being an isolationist kind of mentality with Kyoshi on the Kyoshi Island for whatever reason. But again, I don't do too much about that, or I don't say too much critique on that, because I do think that Korra's story was supposed to be about Korra and her group, and Suki just wasn't a part of that story, so that's fine. But in terms of like flashback and Red Lotus, like that would have been a perfect segue, you know. But I've talked about that before. Like you can watch that whole video about what I think about that. But again, I don't see a lot of Suki stands in this chat right now. I want to hear from Suki stands. I want to understand why you guys love Suki so much, because I hear it all the time, but I don't understand it. Suki is fine, but they really needed to break her down and make her test her resolve, maybe to the point of hopelessness. I don't know. It's fine at this point in the comics. I want to see the gang older, mid-20s. You know what? I agree too. And I think, yeah, I completely agree. I think I would have loved to see her really getting pushed to her limits so we can really see her at her lowest, because we haven't really seen that from Suki. We haven't seen her at her lowest. You would think her being a boiling rock for several months without her Suki warriors without her Kyoshi warriors, we would have seen something like that, but we didn't see her at her lowest point, and I would have definitely liked seeing that. We haven't seen Suki at her lowest, and that's the thing about Zuko alone. We see him at a pretty low. Korra alone, we see her at her low. What was supposed to be Kuvira alone, but then we got the comic books. We got to see that too from Kuvira. We don't. Yeah, that's the thing. That's the missing element with Suki, I believe, is that we don't see her at her lowest low. Who do you like more, Suki or Asami? They are equally blah to me. They're equally blah characters. Like Asami is the perfect, I guess, like not segue, but like the perfect analogous to Suki, because I think about them in exactly the same way. Like they both are blah to me. I do like how it ended with Suki's spirit. Oh yeah, let's talk about Suki's spirit, because that's like on the cover, right? So I thought, oh, maybe that's what the whole comic's going to be about. Maybe she, gets in touch with Kyoshi's spirit, and then we're going to get some cool insights on that. Even that, it was just like a fleeting moment of Kyoshi coming out and just basically saying the thing that we already know. I mean, I guess you can say that her lowest low in this is when she's in the prison and they take away her plants and stuff like that. But I feel like that wasn't enough. Like I feel like that was just like, like that. And then the thing with Kyoshi, it's just a quick thing. It's just like, you're not alone. Like, okay. Like it could have been better than that. I feel like that was just like whatever. It was just so small and little, and I don't know. It could have been better. I think the comic just could have been a lot better. I think we love Suki because she's with Sokka. I mean, possibly that could be it. Who is your favorite non-bender? Because Suki is the one for me. Oh, and Ty Lee. Non-bender for me would probably be Sokka. I think Sokka would probably be my favorite non-bending character, or Zahir. But I mean, we never got to see Zahir as a non-bender. But like what I have in my head canon of Zahir as a non-bender, like in my head, that's my favorite. So I would say like either Zahir, there's no canon version of him that we've seen, in the story of him being a non-bender. But I would say him and then Sokka. If I could do a one shot, what would it be on? Man, I don't even know. Like I feel like I think with the Avatar characters, they're done to death. I think we don't need anything with them. Maybe something entirely new. Like I would love to see like a one-shot character on someone that we haven't even known at all. Maybe dealing with like the Fire Nation, maybe a non-bender who's dealing with the Fire Nation, or just a non-Avatar character. Maybe like a Republic City one shot would be kind of cool. Like just following maybe like a gang member from one of the triad groups or something like that. But yeah, that's it, guys. Sorry, today's kind of a rush day because I want to get some videos edited and I wanted to go do my live stream for my video game stuff. So that's it. I think we got pretty much everything that we were going to talk about for this. I mean, I was hoping to find some more like Suki stands in the chat. Didn't really have it, but that is okay. But I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace, love, and remember, be water, my friends.